only works if you could read my lips, right? After it. Like, I'm all over this thing, kind of. I'm a little bit technologically challenged. Yeah, so my mother is Tlingit, and my father was English. I didn't know my father. I never met him, so I can't tell you much about him. I just know he was the only child in his family, and my grandmother said that when I come to be with new people, I need to tell you who I am. So I'll just tell you first. Yount Leslie you gat do a saw Tlingit gat kokitan gat yenyeri dach chunk. My name is Yount Leslie. That's my real name. That was the name I was given before I came into this world. And it's a name carried by many people. And so I carry all those people with me. And it's not even that heavy of a load. I come from a Raven clan, Kokitan it's called, the children of the Raven. I'm grateful to be here. My mother's name is Margaret McLeod. My father's name was Harold. My grandma's name is Annie Good. And Jackie Good is my grandfather. I'm honored to be here. I'm looking forward to. I'm born into a story people, and I love that. I love the stories, and you know what we realize is that everything is about story, everything, and I tell a lot of stories. Some of them are true. You'll have to figure out which ones are which. Anyway, thank you. I'm honored to be here. We'll just I'm from the Yukon, born and raised here. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to spending a few times. Yeah, I believe in magic. Not the hocus pocus stuff, not the guy who makes the elephant disappear off the stage kind of magic. I believe in magic like the magic as I see you, as I look at you, the magic that brought us together, right? And I can't not think that we spent our entire lives for this moment right here. And also part of that magic is that if I left right now, I will already have become a part of your life, and you a part of mine. And that's forever, kind of. So I'm really grateful for this moment. And I look forward to spending time. Next. Shall we do it alphabetically or just go for it?
Do you mind if we come off mute and stay off mute while you're?
No, yeah, please. Yes, everybody off mute.
Because we're all here together for a reason.
Absolute.
We lived with my grandfather, and I got lots of family stories that are all in my head that I have to get written down soon because everybody else is gone now. So loved hearing the stories.
Sorry, the teacher in me made me put up my hand. I am Jamie. I'm from Dryden, Ontario, and I am so looking forward to this time together. And I am too believe that we're all brought together for a reason, and that we are never the same person again. So whatever this time will bring will change us in one way or another. So thank you.
I was born into a family in January, and I was blessed to know my 4 grandparents who were quite delighted to have me around because I was the first grandchild. And Ellen came from my mom's mother, and Jean, which is my second name, came from my other grandma on my dad's side, dad's mom. And so when I was with my dad's side of the family, I was known as Ellen Jean. And when I was with mom's side of the family, I was known as Ellen. And I can remember as a little one asking my mom, how come sometimes I'm called Ellen and sometimes I'm called Ellen Jean, and sometimes you raise your voice and call me Ellen Jean, but it's quite heavy, you know, and so I thought everybody spent time with their grandparents. So for me, that was just an assumption that I had. And I know the stories of my grandparents and my mom and dad, and I share them a lot. So my dad is still alive at 93. So he and I tell stories a lot.
So I also live in the Yukon, but I've only been here for 3.5 years. My name's Martha Mason, and I was born in Minnesota of people completely Norwegian ancestry, but settled in Minnesota in the 19th century. So I came to this session, Phillip, to learn more about my new home. Really looking forward to it.
I am Gerhard. I am a World War II survivor in Germany, and I am interested in what do we do with people who we have never met, but in some sense are significant. So like you, Phil, I have never known my father. I have as a child, made up stories that he was a war hero, a German soldier who did great things. But how do we handle people who are significant, but we have never met? Thank you.
Jeez.
My name's Mary. I'm in the Surrey area of BC. I was just reflecting on my name. I was named after my father's mother, who died a couple years before I was born. And I always wondered who she was and what she was about, and heard from my dad her interests, and I felt a connection through our name. My mother was adopted, and probably about 10 years ago, her adoption records were unsealed. And we discovered her biological mother's name, which was Mary.
Wow.
And she died in the 90s. And so I've also been on a journey of wondering who she was, and feel a connection there again through name. And so just thinking of stories and people and connection and ancestors. So grateful to be in this circle.
Hey, goodness, geez.
My name's Susan, and I live in St. John's, Newfoundland. And I was born on my aunt's birthday. And we share a second name, but it was many years later that I found out that Susan in Egyptian means lily, and her name was Lily.
Wow.
So, so by accident, I was called after her both ways.
Wow.
I'm Wes Gertzen. I'm in Southwest Manitoba in Boissevain, but I grew up in Nebraska, in Henderson. And my name's not a family name, but it was a nod. I grew up in a Mennonite community. My mom's not, well, those are often fairly closed communities. My mom's not Mennonite, and so she's Methodist background. So my dad sort of suggested Wesley as a nod to her, and so that's my name.
Mhm.
I'm Rachel. My first name, my parents wanted to pick something out of the Bible, so Rachel comes out of the Old Testament. As for my last name, we're doing lots of research on it. So my maiden name is Myers, and my grandfather was very secretive about his past. So it wasn't until I started doing family tree research we were able to confirm the spelling and that our last name actually was Myers, because it was just until we were able to start doing the research, we started to understand the secrets of why things were hushed. And through the research, we've been able to find our ancestors and where we came from when we originally came to Canada. And Maiden is my partner's name. And through the family tree research, we're starting to find out that they were Métis at one point and originally came here as French. And we're starting to learn more about that history behind the name.
Hi, my name is Ray Ellen, and I'm based on Vancouver Island. And my first name, Ray, was actually the name of my father's favorite uncle. But they shifted the Y off of the end of the name and feminized it to R-A-E. Ellen, I don't know where that comes from. I think that the two names just rolled together and my parents like that. Part of what my journey has been for many years has been looking into and exploring, and in some cases making peace with aspects of my ancestry, particularly on my father's side, that some would call dodgy and that I call colorful. So it's been an interesting trip integrating all of that into my own experience, but then also granting myself my own experience that is free of my ancestry, so that it is a part of me, but it does not necessarily define who I am in this moment and going forward. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Gosh, geez.
Well, my name is Junaid Lackey, and I'm joining from Newfoundland. And my name was actually my great-grandfather's last name, and he came to Canada as a refugee from Syria. And it would have been lost because when he came to Canada, he changed his name to his host family's name. But my mother wanted it to be kept going, so she named me Junaid. It's nice to be here.
Oh, geez.
My name is Michelle. It's Michelle Ann, actually. And I came across my name in a comical way in that my parents thought that they were having a boy. And so my name was actually Michael. And so Michelle to them was the closest to Michael. And it's quite interesting because Anne, I had never liked the name Anne. And but I'm named after my aunt who I'm very close to. And so Anne has actually become the most meaningful part of my name. And I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Gosh, geez.
My name is Hope, and I'm sorry that I can't share my video. I'm having some technical difficulties today, but I'm joining you from Virginia in the United States. And My name Hope is actually my mother's maiden name, and her father was the only boy in his family, and he had 3 daughters, and my mom was the youngest of those daughters. And so the name was going to die out at that generation. So I carry that name forward, and it's always been very meaningful to me. So thank you.
Yeah. My name is Kelly. I come from Calgary on Treaty 7. My name was, I understand, a character in a book. What's interesting about the name is that my mother had spelled it a certain way, and she was young, and the powers that be returned it to her with a correction. So it's spelled with an EY at the end instead of what she wanted was an IE. And Kelly means warrior woman, which has been very meaningful because it's not Lily and it's not something sweet and adorable. It's something that has some power to it. So, and I'm of Irish and Scottish ancestry, and I have an affinity for that land, and I just recently visited there, and a lot of the stories are lost. They haven't been passed along to me by my grandparents on my father's side, for sure. My grandmother didn't believe that you should be in the present and not dwell in the past. So for whatever reason, I don't have stories from her, that side of the family, but I do have some from my mother's side. And so I'm grateful to be here today.
Is that it?
My name is Rebecca. I'm joining from Newfoundland as well. My name story is similar, that my mother liked a lot of boys' names, and this was the girl name they agreed on, and I was a girl. I am excited to hear each other's stories today and spend this time together in community.
I love the way that as people introduce themselves, everyone has a story about their name. I mean, that's so cool, right? When you think about it. And the name carries something with it, right? Something like whether it's flower or it's peacemaker or it's warrior or, whatever. My name is, my English name, I guess you could call it, is Phillip Alexander Gatensby. Philip after Philip of Macedonia, and Alexander the Great, his son. Just kidding you, that's not true. That is my name though. But my grandfather's name was Alexander, and my uncle's name was Philip. But it sounds cooler that way. It's all in how you look at it, I suppose. The idea, I remember it wasn't long ago where I was at an elder's house, a woman here that's very well respected, and we were having tea at her house, and her great-great-grandchild ran across the floor in front of her, just a tiny little girl. And the woman said, she went, "Ah, my ongoing breath," she said, like that. And I thought, whoa, that is the coolest thing I ever heard, right? My ongoing breath. And when I heard that and I thought about it, I realized I am my grandmother's life. I'm her life, right? It's inside of me. It's my ancestors are in my DNA, right, from the beginning. And so much of what we call history, right, is in us. It's you know, if we could just figure out the cellular memory stuff, it would be so cool, you know. And I thought about, I was down at Tim Hortons here one day, and I thought about my ancestors, how they walked on this land, and how, you know, how it must have felt before, you know, the gold rush came and all the, you know, the flood of different peoples, right? And I thought about how they walked through with this deep knowing of their connection to everything, their relationship with everything, their kinship. And every tree, every animal, every insect, every plant, right? Everything, right? You know, and how it must have felt to them, right? And as I was sitting there thinking about it and imagining what it must have felt like, I almost could feel it, you know, inside me when I thought like that. And as I sat there, in my brain, I thought, I wonder if there's a possibility, if anyone could ever get back to that place of knowing again. And then this voice, like crystal clear in my head, said, "You were never separate." And I thought, ooh, tricky brain. You know, it's like it's that, just the idea of, I wonder if I could ever get back there is so, I got so clear, right? Names are so powerful, you know, they carry history with them. You know, I hear so many names, for example, so many names when I go south. Some of the names are so beautiful and they mean so many beautiful things. Well, my name, Jan Leslie, Jan is the male herring, and Leslie is the white stuff that he puts on the eggs, you know. So my name doesn't translate well in English. It's like fertilizer Phil, or, you know, herring sperm, you know. So, you know, it's like, it's a little, you can't really brag about that, right? You know, when you introduce yourself. But however, my grandmother said it was a life name. And so it was very, very powerful. And so, yeah, but it isn't like one that you sort of offer up, you know, in a meeting. Anyway, my grandmother was a very traditional woman. You know, she, for whatever reason, her father was on to the missionaries when residential school started here, and he took off into the bush, and none of his kids went to residential school, nor did my mother. I did, but they didn't, right? And it was a very powerful thing, because I was able to, my grandmother was a very traditional kind of person, and story was the way, right? And, you know, I mean, I was like a hard head kid, right? You know, I didn't listen. I mean, she told me so many stories, right? And I realized later in my life as an adult, those stories that she told me told me who I was. It was like a gift inside them. It told me who my people were, who I belonged to, how I should move through life, right? Again, I didn't really buy up into all that stuff. I mean, I had to learn, you know, I had to touch the stove before I learned that it burned, you know. And I've also adopted sort of a really clear understanding that crap makes good fertilizer, you know, in terms of life. And the farmers swear by it, you know, and so do I, right? So, you know, I've been through that. But one of the things, and I think this is interesting, well, for me, there's a song that the Tlingit people will sing when they come together with a group of people. I'll spare you the singing, but it says, "Suhede shugach tutan, ya haskau de kit, kuske de kate hajik anak." It means I'm going to open up this box or this basket of wisdom that was left in my care by my ancestors. You come and look inside there. If there's something that you need, take it, it belongs to you. And if there's stuff you don't need, leave it, it's fine, it's good, right? And so I want to say that, like, I don't know, again, as I approach this, I'm not when someone asked me, Bev asked me to tell this and said it was a Bible thing, I said, I don't know any Bible stories. I mean, I know some, you know, from being in residential school and that, but what I do know is the stories that bind people, the humans together, and bind me together with the great mystery or the creator or God. I know that. I know in our culture, in Tlingit culture, we have a story about the raven who is not, Raven is the one that created everything, but Raven is not God. Raven is the child of God, you could say, right? It's, you know, there's so many parallels in my culture, in the stories of my culture. And even in the stories of the creation story of Raven, when Raven, when the earth was in black and darkness, and they said that Raven, you know, knew that there was someone who lived at a certain place that kept the sun and the moon and the stars in baskets and wouldn't share them with the world, so the world was always in darkness. And so the Raven, one day this person had a daughter, and the daughter would go down to the water and to a creek or something and get a drink of water every day. So Raven turned himself into a hemlock needle and went into the glass of water, and she drank the water, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Raven as a human being. I always thought that's so interesting because that story is thousands and thousands of years old, right? But it's so much parallel with the others, with the book, right? And then this I always wondered how come her father didn't question how she got pregnant, right? There was nothing in the story like that, but he loved his grandchild so much. I mean, just loved them. And so Raven one day was just, you know, would look at this box, and he knew what was in the box, right? And so he wanted to play with it, and the person would say, no, 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 you just leave that alone, leave it alone. But he cried and cried and cried, and so finally they'd say, okay, he said, here, you know, go ahead. Well, Raven took and he took the lid off, and the stars all flew up into the sky, came out of the box. And one by one, he would do the same thing. He'd cry and cry, and his grandfather just couldn't handle him being so sad, and he would let him have that box. And again, he would open it up, and then the moon, and then the sun, right? And there was light in the world. And the story, you know, goes on about that, about all the creation, right? How the raven, someone held water in a place and wouldn't share it with anybody, and so the raven went and tricked him, and then made the lakes and the streams and all the different waters, and you know, the lands, you know. And in the story, it's like a 4-day story, really, you know, about creation, about the raven. And but the raven, the raven is called Yes, but they call the raven the Keon cow, rather, the Keon cow. But Raven's father is named the Keon cow, which is what people refer to as the creator, the great mystery, right? And so Raven was the child of that. Anyway, there's a whole story about that, right? About how that was all created. And it's as a child, we would listen to the stories, right? They were so cool to hear my grandmother tell the story. And so when she said, hey, come on, you guys, I'm going to tell a story, we would all go and sit around the campfire and listen, right? And it was such a pleasure to hear it, right? But so many things I don't know, the world I lived in, it was like, that was old world, right? My grandma's stories. But now, the thing that I prize the most inside me is what my grandmother gave to me, right, as a gift. Even the ability to tell stories. You know, I realize now that that's the way we work, right? We tell stories to each other, right? And what's really interesting is when I think about what's my story to me, right? Who told me, right? Or how did I come to believe what I believe about the world around me and the people around me and the things around me? And so one of the things my grandmother, I remember when I was 13 years old, I was in residential school. I came home for the summer, and the Anglican minister came over to her house, or to our house, uh, and she sent us into the back room, my three brothers and I, and broke out the cookies that we never got. She kept them for special, special things, occasions. So she made tea, and they sat down and put out the cookies. And so the Anglican minister sat there, and after some time of, just sort of small talk, he said to my grandmother, Annie, he said, I noticed you haven't been coming to church lately. And my grandma said, yeah, I've been thinking about it. She said, is your God inside that church? And the Anglican minister said, absolutely. He's absolutely inside there. And she said, that's what I was thinking about. She said, you people must be mean to keep him inside there like that. She said, you should let him out sometime. And she said, I don't think I'm going to go to church anymore. She said, and now I think the land will be my Bible. Right. And I was in the back room. I was like, yes, Grandma. Right. And I went out and I looked at my grandmother, and I saw this old woman, right, who knew so much. And she was born in a world where she only spoke Tlingit. That's all she spoke. That was it. And I realized she was forced to go into another people's world and to live another people's way. She was forced to learn another people's language and speak it. And I looked at my grandma and I said, Grandma, I said, do you hate them people? And she said, my goodness, grandchild, no. She said, they don't understand. She said, do you think they'd be like that if they understood? And I thought my grandma's a naive old woman, right? But I totally understand what she said now, right? It's around us. There's so many people who don't understand. When I was in residential school, I used to run away a lot. Used to take off into the bush and just live in the bush, right? Just go eat berries and things and have a grand old time. But at one point, I came to this little place. It was a spring, a small little spring, and I sat down and I was eating cranberries, and I was just sitting there. And I was in residential school, and people talked about, the different religions, right? Those guys are not quite right. They don't quite get it. We got it though, right? And here's how you should be, and here's what you should do. And I remember, thinking, for me, I have I have a mind that wants to know stuff, right? And so I couldn't figure that out, right? How come they said they're wrong, they're right, like that, right? Anyway, I'm sitting there, and I got up and I looked around, and I could actually feel God. Like I could feel it right in that moment, right? Which I'd never ever done before, right? It never happened to me, no matter how many times I was forced to go to Sunday school and do the thing. It just, never could. But in that moment, in that place in the bush, I could feel it, right? And so I said, I think I was probably 13. So I said, I can feel you. I said, I can feel you now. I said, I don't know what's going on, right? I said, but I know you're here, and I know you're real. And so I said, I'm not gonna, those people keep on telling me different stories about this and that and the other thing. And so I'm not gonna believe any of that stuff. I said, I'm just gonna believe in you. That's all I'm gonna do. And I said, and when you tell me something, I'm gonna pay attention to it, right? And so I never did. I never did really, believe in anything like that. I only knew that was real. And I went through. I got out of residential school when I was 15. I went to prison for 7 years. Different things. That's where the fertilizer came from. And so and at some point. I had an experience where something spoke to me inside, right, and said, many times we ask, like, what am I doing here? What's my purpose? What, and in this moment, I saw myself as three clearly distinct things. One was who I thought I was, And, you know, I had just got out of prison. I was a cool guy, tough guy, solid guy, you know, all those things. But what I realized when I saw it, I realized it wasn't really me. It was what I wanted everyone to think I was, right? How tough I was or how whatever I was. And so I thought, that's not me, really. That's not really me, right? You know, and the second thing that I saw was who I thought I should be. And you know, it's like, you know, by the time I'm 25, I should have a career and a White House and a picket fence and 2.2 kids and, you know, like that, right? And I looked at it and I thought, that isn't me, right? I've never been like that, right? I may never be like that. And so when I looked at it and I saw it, I thought, well, if I'm not these things, then who the heck am I, right? And this voice basically said to me, you know, if you want to be what I want you to be yourself. Because that's what I made, you know, and it never occurred to me. I was 28 years old. It never occurred to me that I didn't even know who I was, right? 28 years I lived there. I thought I had it, you know, figured out. And so what I realized in that moment that the only thing that I ever wanted since I was born was to be loved, to be cared for, right? And I also realized that that's really love is the name of what we refer to as God, the Creator. I mean, if Creator had a name, it would be love, you know. And so it was a really interesting moment for me, kind of, right, to see it. It's like the sun came out and the fog disappeared, you know. And so it's been there were times in our culture, there's so many things. Maybe one of the things traditionally is fasting, right? Fasting, you know. I had a dream about fasting. I should have that I should fast. And I like eating, right? I don't want to starve myself. It just doesn't make sense to me. But it was a strong dream, and in my dream, I don't know what, these spirits, I guess, said to me, go up on the mountain and fast. We want you to fast for 4 days, no food, no water, right? And I'm like, heck, that's not my idea of a fun time, you know. And so, but it bothered me. It stayed with me, and so I finally did go up there. When I went up there, I saw something that really struck me as amazing. Was I was sitting, was on the third day of my fast, and I was sitting, there was a boulder in front of me, and I watched this ant. I mean, after, you know, 2 or 3 days, you kind of run out of stuff to think about, you know, you just watch things, you know, you observe. Anyway, I watched this ant pulling a fly. And the fly was like 2 or 3 times bigger than the ant, but it was dragging it across the ground. And I watched the ant pull that fly up the side of this boulder. And I you know, I thought, why doesn't it go around? You know, that's craziness, right? But it pulled it right up the side of that boulder and then started to pull it across the top. And I watched another ant that was meandering all over the place. And the other ant, you know, that it went over and walked around this one with the fly once. And then it grabbed a hold of the fly, and one started pushing and one started pulling, you know. And when I saw that, I thought, you know, that ant didn't hesitate, right? That ant didn't say, are we from the same cast of life, or have you ever offended me, or, you know, anything like that. And I thought the only thing that ant has ever done for its entire life was to work to make the world a better place for the future of its people, its kind, right? Which are ants in the anthill, you know. And but everything it did was about that, right? And then a honeybee landed on my wrist, and I looked at that and I thought, I thought you do that too, right? From the moment that bee was capable, the only thing it's ever done for its entire life was to work to make the world a better place for the future of its kind, right? Which are bees in the beehive. Ultimately, though, it benefits all of creation, what they do. And I started to look around, I saw the birds, and I thought, they're doing it too. Then I started looking at the plants and seeing how the trees drop their leaves and it becomes fertilizer. And I thought, whoa, they're doing it. I started to look around the mountain. I thought, and I saw every single thing on that mountain was doing exactly the same thing. Everything, right to the dirt, right, was given of itself to make that world a better place for the future of its kind. And you know, there's so many times in our lives when we say, why am I here, right? There's got to be a reason. And when I saw that in that moment, I realized that's it, right? Our whole thing is to give of ourselves, you know, to make the world a better place for the future of our people, whoever's coming behind us. That's what story is about too, right? Is about that, leaving a trail, whether it's a scary story or it's a story about, you know, wonderful things. You know, my grandmother, she said, there's a few things she said to me, but one of the things she said to me one time was, she said to me, "You're the earth." And I was like, I don't get it. What do you mean I'm the earth? Are you calling me dirt? You know, and she said, "You're the earth." She said, "You're not from the earth. You are the earth. One day," she said, "no, you know, someday you're going to go back to the earth again. You're going to turn back to dirt. Your body will lay down and you'll turn back to dirt." And she said, "That's what you are." And it was kind of weird, right, to hear that. It's like, I'm dirt. Huh. I might change my name. So, and then she said to me, you have a fire inside of you. It's inside here," she said, "and it keeps your body warm." And, you know, I mean, at the time, it's like when she said that, I really couldn't connect to the fire part, right? But later I learned in school, when you ask somebody, how come your body stays warm when it's 20 below zero, right? Everything they say to you will suggest fire, right? People say, "Oh, you burn your calories," or, you know, but it always goes back to the burning or the fire thing, right? And so, so my grandma, I don't know how she knew that, but that's true. And I think she was talking about spirit, right? And or the life force, right? And so, and she said to me, she said, "Most of you is water." She said, "It's your water," right? And she told me that, I don't know, anybody here drink water? Water drinkers? Anybody drink fresh water? Where would you get fresh water? Someone tell me.
A spring.
A spring? How
River.
old do you think that water might be in the spring?
Sorry, the first part?
How old do you think the water might be from the spring?
Be thousands of years old.
Millennia.
Billions actually, right? Old as the earth, probably, right? And science says earth is 4.5 billion years old. So that water that you're drinking, that you think, this water in the coffee here is like 4.5 billion year old water, but still pretty good though for old water, right? You know, and there's a way, something has created this incredible way, right? It's like when I'm done here, my water is going to go back to what? It's going to just go back to the water again, right? There's this miracle thing that where for 4.5 billion years, the water inside our bodies have done this cycle, right? You know, where it's drawn up into the sky, falls down on, gives life to something, and then drawn back up and does it again and again. I mean, in 4.5 billion years, I don't know how many times that's happened, but I'm guessing quite a bit. And I think about how many flowers bloom from the water inside my body, right? How many leaves unfurled? How many animals drank this water for life? How many fish swam through my water? This water, not my water, but this water. You know, how many, you know, I mean, how many seeds sprouted from this water that's inside of me? And I'm like, and now I realize I'm something like 75 or 80% 4.5 billion year old water. And it's given me life just like it does to everything. And now if that isn't a good plan, you know what I mean, a good creation. And then we breathe the air. She said that our air, she said, when you blow your air out and you use the goodness of it, the plants take that and they use it for their breath. And she said, and then when they breathe out, it gives you that fresh air again. So she said it does the same thing. It's recycled, right? And so it made me think we're the same earth. All of us here today are the same earth, right? We're 80% identical water. We have the same fire inside of us, and we breathe the same air. So then how are we bound to each other? How are we connected? You know, so maybe I'll just talk to your water instead of your head. I'll just talk to your water, because your water's 80% same as me, right? And your water will definitely hear me. You know, and so that was a powerful thing, you know, and I realized later, you know, that the tree that grows outside my house has a physical body and will someday go back and recycle itself. The tree has the same exact water inside of its body that's inside me. The tree has a spark of life given by the great mystery to that tree. Same exact spark, right? And the tree breathes the same air. Then what's my relationship with that tree? You know, and the raven that flies over and calls out to me, same thing. It's got the same water, same air. It's going to give back to earth at some point. And yeah, it's an amazing thing to me, right? It's sort of like my grandmother knew that. How the heck she knew that is beyond me. But wow. So it's like we live in a world. I don't know how it is where you come from, where you're living, but where I live, there's a lot of contamination in the world, a lot, right? And it's actually really hard to move through it without getting some on you, right? And so there needs to be a way, of course, you know, of renewing, just like the water, right? There needs to be a new way, you know. And so one of the things about, you know, for me, again, my grandmother, her whole way was she never ever lectured or whatever, but her whole way was to tell you a story about something, you know. She said one time, just not long before she passed away, she told me a story about an old woman. She said one day there was an old woman walking down the trail with a knapsack on her back, and she said that as she walked by, she came across this man who looked kind of grubby, right? And he looked like he was having a hard time. And this man stopped her and said, "Could you help me out?" He said, I have no work. I've got a family. I have no food at home. Is there anything you could give me that could just help? And so the old woman took her knapsack off and she opened it up and she said, "Take anything you want. Take whatever you want." And so he looked in there and he saw a big gemstone that was like a ruby looking gemstone, right? Very beautiful. And so he looked at her and he said, "Anything?" She said, "Anything, take anything." And he said, he reached in, he took out that gemstone and he said, "Even this?" And she said, "Yes, absolutely." She said, "Take it, it belongs to you." And so he left, right? Well, he thought, "Man, I'm going to sell this. I'm going to be rich as a king and I'm going to live, you know, really well for the rest of my life." And then the next day she was walking along, this old woman, and with her knapsack, and she hears this voice and she turns around and it's that man, that beggar man. And he comes up to her and says, "Here, take this back." And so he has the gemstone, right? He says, "Take it back." And she said, "No, it's fine. I said you could have it. It's yours. It belongs to you." She said, "I told you that." He said, I know you told me that." She said, "You could take whatever you want." And he said, "Yes, I remember you said that, but I don't want this." He said, "I want whatever you have that allowed you to give me that." You know, and in story, it's kind of like that, right? You know, sometimes we think it's the gemstone, but it's not that, right? It's what's behind the story, the energy behind it. I run into so many people. My head is really, my head's like, I have an interesting brain. It wants to know everything. It's analytical, you know, it wants to know everything, wants to know why, you know, and how and all that stuff. But at the same time, there's another part of me that has this idea that it's all as it should be. Everything is as it should be. I bought a book some years ago in the 70s, and I thought, I'm going to write into this book all my little epiphanies or whatever. I'll write into this book, and when I leave this world, my children will be able to look at the book and have a look of the inside of me. And so I just found it the other day. I was looking through a box, and I saw it, and I opened it up, and I had written in there just one paragraph, and it said, if a person decides to live the best possible life that they can live, if a person decides to be as kind as they can be in this world, if they decide for themselves to be show kindness to people less fortunate, if they are mindful of how the words that come out of their mouth, so that they don't cause hurt or damage to people, then that will become their character. And I said, and if you do that, and that becomes your character, you will hear the voice of God. And as I read it, I thought, that's interesting, because I wrote that back, like I said, in the 70s. But what I realized when I read it this time is that that the voice of God is everything. For me, the voice of God is everything, and it's how you see it, right? How you know. We're given two baskets, kind of. One is good, and one is bad, and everything we do goes into one or the other, right? But nothing it's just for me. Nothing that I ever do is separate. Not one cell in my body would work without the Creator. Not one cell. And I've just come to this realization that if I search for the truth, then I've acknowledged to myself that I don't have it. And I've created sort of a conundrum or a paradox in a way, right? And where would I look for the truth? Where would I look for it, right? You know, everywhere outside of myself, everywhere. The one place I will never look for it is inside me. And so I have now this idea that it's in every one of us. So, like, you know, like I said, I speak to people oftentimes, but people hear me with their heads, and the heads has been, you know, it's filled with stuff, fertilizer. And so that's the nicest way I can put it. You know what I mean? So that you know, so the idea is that sorry, distracted phone call. Sorry, Annie, I'm on a Zoom. Sorry. There. Anyway, so yeah, so I'm thinking that we're, like I said, we look everywhere outside of ourselves for this thing that we want, we call the truth. But I think it's everywhere. It's all around us about how we look. What if it was inside of us? What if it was planted in us already? And we didn't have to look for anything. We just needed to pay attention. You know, my grandmother, there were times where we went out picking berries, for example. I thought my grandmother controlled the weather. She was a traditional woman, right? We'd go down the lake and we'd pick berries, and we had to cross the lake to go to where the berries were from where we camped. And then at one point we went to, we were done berry picking and the wind was blowing hard and the waves were big and, the lake. And my grandmother went down to the water and I'm thinking she might have put tobacco into the water, but I'm not positive. But she spoke to the water like I'm talking to you. She spoke to it like it was a real, like alive or a thing, right? And she called it her relations. And she said, could you calm down a little bit? We need to get back across to our camp. Could you just calm down? And then she spoke to the wind in the same way. She said, my relation, we need to go across and, the waves are too big. Could you just calm down a little bit? Just stop and let us go back across. And then it kind of calmed down. It didn't get glass calm all of a sudden, right? But the waves got smaller, right? And she yelled at us, come on, get in the boat, hurry up, you kids. And we jumped in the boat and we went across. And as soon as we got to the other side of the lake, woof, the wind picked up again and the waves picked up. And I thought, my grandma controls the weather, right? And it was like, whoa, that's wild, right? How powerful. But then another time when we were up walking, and it was a nice summer day in June or July, and she said, it's going to rain. She just said that it was going to rain. And we looked up, no clouds, no, nothing, clear blue sky. And we said, Grandma, it's clear out. It's not going to rain. And she pointed at this plant and she said, you see that plant there? She said, look how it turns its leaf up like that. She said, when that plant turns its leaf up, it's calling the rain. She said, it's going to rain. Sure enough, in the afternoon, what do you know? Dark clouds come in and it rains. But I didn't think my grandma controlled the rain. I didn't think that plant controlled the rain. I thought they had some kind of relationship, right? That did that. I think for us, it's like that, our relationship is the most important thing of all, right? I am the water. How come I got to struggle so hard when I'm at the swimming pool to keep my head above the water? I should be like a dolphin in there. I'm 80% water. I mean, serious, but, how could I not have a relationship with it? It's me. It gives me life. It's my life. The air that goes in and out of my lungs. I mean, I'm like a victim of the wind, sometimes, but it's my life. It's about relationship is, that's the point for me. It's about our relationship to creation. We're living in a miracle. I mean, you all know that. We're living in a miracle. We are a miracle. Every cell in my body wouldn't work without the great mystery, without Creator, the perfectness of it. And if I'm the child of the perfectness, then I got to get some of the perfectness on me too, right? If I'm the child, it's just like my grandma, my blood, my DNA. And so what I've discovered, is that I can make universal law, but I can't make universal law for you. I can only make it for myself. And so if we're out doing something and, out in the world, and I say to you, this is wrong, we shouldn't do this, it won't have changed anything for you. But because I said that, if I ever did it again, it will be wrong. And so I think about what we say to ourselves on a daily basis, right? The things that come out. And we're creators. We can create the miracle kind of too. We can, by how we say, how we speak, how we think. It's it's all a miracle, right? For me. And so I think, I had just visions or whatever pop into my head, but one of the times said, what what if you were the container that held the sacredness of your ancestors? It said to me. And I thought, I am the container. That wasn't a question. That was a statement. I am the container. Imagine from the beginning how much wisdom and knowledge came from those people, from our ancestors. And we are them. I'm my grandmother's breath. For me, that's a story, right? The story is us. And here's I think this is kind of the cool thing, is we get to write the story. That's us. It's almost like being the producer or the script writer of a movie, right? I can write the script, but I'm also going to star in the movie too. So I have a choice if I'm going to be the hero, or it's going to be a tragedy or comedy, or a, you know. I think that's where story comes in. I know. Every one of us have that, the common. Every one of us, no matter where, no matter who, no matter what race, we're the same. We're the same. And I think that's what we have to see. When I can see the water in somebody, I get it. I get what binds us, right? I totally can see it. And sometimes if people won't hear me, if their heads are kind of in the way, I'll just speak to their water, because they're 80% identical to me. I'll just talk to their water because their water will hear me. We have a camp, a culture camp here, and people came to our culture camp and said to me, this is such an incredible place. It feels so sacred, so. And I kind of, just joking, I said, yeah, do you think I just had a sacred divining rod, went through the forest till I found that sacred spot? Or is it all sacred? And we just don't recognize it, right? People come out here because they struggle with addiction and things like that, but I know that we call Mother Earth, right? Just like a mother, she'll heal you up if you give it a chance. And what's interesting is when we walk out into the forest, we come alive, right? Our hearing gets better, our sense of smell gets better, our spidey sense gets better. But when we go into a city or a concrete place, it's kind of it shuts down. So we come alive, right? And I think that's really, really interesting, right? I think we should just again connect with that miracle, right? And be alive all the time, share it with people. Oh, I gotta go. It's time. I got but thank you so much for letting me, to share time with you, share life with you.
Kunashish.
Hey. Wa etsu. That means, and you. Any questions?
It's lovely to hear the stories.
It's all about the stories, isn't it? Really.
It makes so much sense. It fits with
Science. I'm a scientist, and science confirms what you have said. What is still a mystery is what you call the brain or the mind or the consciousness. How that part works is still a mystery for science. But it's not science against faith or science against living the story. Those are two different things. Science is more like a tool. And some people try to take what science has discovered and abuse it. That's the sad part.
Hmm. How does science feel about magic?
Science is part of magic.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Sorry. Well, that's it then.
Thank you so much.
Thank
So
you.
I'll remember you in my prayers at ceremony, and you do the same for. There's a lot of us out there trying to create a better world. Not trying, we are creating a better world, and it's good that we can support each other. It's even in thought. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Okay, bye. Create a good day.